The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra-high-quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section with a link to the video offered. And to see everything we do, or if you want to receive notice of new releases, new products, and new events for artists, simply click the other link, which says, "See everything we do." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes with Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazines. We're trying to get you through these trying times by giving you some samples and interviews with artists. Today we have Scott W. Pryor painting the urban landscape. I think you're going to enjoy this one.
So one of the things I like to do is take my shadow colors and mix them with my light colors. Which helps the harmony, all around color harmony. I know I've said that before, but it's important so that your whole painting goes together. And so right now I'm just trying to lighten up some of the buildings in the background a little bit more, just so there's more indicated detail. Punch in some light in the back. Touching the light with that to help knock it back so it's not popping out, screaming at you. Just adding some dabs of light, hitting the buildings and the cars in the background. I'm only trying to make it look like they're there. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. It just, again, indicating stuff in the background. You kind of get the idea that it's cars and stuff. And I'll go back in it and add more stuff. with darks, going back and forth, back and forth. Coming forward. Hit those cars again there. Oops, that was too light, too dark, sorry. More dabs of light. Now I want to add a little bit of color to some of the cars, right in here and in here, just to add a hint of color before I get too carried away with my highlights. Just to break it up too, to indicate some cars that, you know, have their own individual . Actually, those cars are a little bigger over there. They're out further than I thought. Constantly adjusting my drawing. Always moving around, always checking stuff, always. That's looking a little better. They're just dabs. They're not, I'm not going to go in and render each one. Not too much, at least. Like I was saying earlier, just trying to indicate them. Go back, put a little more light on the color now. Just going back and forth. Got a little ahead of myself by forgetting the color. So I want to start defining this area a little more. So I noticed that my trees are a little off with my proportions, so just a minor adjustment. I want to bring it down a little more so they almost touch and overlap. What I'm noticing is down in here, and there's in the photo, there's that corner down there. So I'm just trying to see and define that a little more because there's a car going across the intersection, and it is a busy street, so I want to get that in there. I want to make sure it looks like the street that I was just at, you know. There's like people and a car right here, and I made my car too big at first. Got a little touch of light right there going to going on the street. No, I use a lot of brushes. I sometimes end up with 10, 12 dirty brushes throughout a painting because I'm lazy. And cleaning brushes is, I wait till the end. So right now I'm just indicating some of the dark spots that are in this building to help define it a little bit more compared to the background. It was too dark, darn it. It's all right, we'll fix it. Again. I'll come back to that. I'll leave that area alone for a little bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm gonna hit a couple spots to make it look like there's a little bit lighter shadow on the sidewalk. Using the other tip, I always do that scrape, brush. You want to try to use the whole side of the brush. So I use all parts. I paint with the tip part, the flat part, this edge, and I scrape too. So I go back and forth. So I'll come back to this area. I'm gonna start to build the trees up some more, bringing it forward again. Starting with these trees back here. Try a little bit of orange just to mute it so it's not so screaming. More yellow. Throw a little viridian in there. Come back into the dark spots, lighten that up a little bit more. Poking through a little bit. Soften a couple edges. by flicking the brush up into it. So I'm taking the wet paint from the dark area and dragging it up into it, just to kind of give that softer feel, so it's not just a hard edge. Because it's a tree, it's not a it's not a metal object. To bring the same green over to this one will have a couple different greens in it because of what's going on with the light. A little darker. Now, remember the rolling the brush? Another way to soften your edges. I'll come back in with some of that brighter green on top, and maybe a little more yellow in this one. Go back into my darks to add a little more form with a cooler, lighter green. Let's get in there. Now notice no white. I didn't use any white in this green. So let's get some branches on those trees. Try to separate that from the background a little bit. So I gotta lighten up behind it just a little bit, just back here. So I can put a couple branches just to indicate a couple branches on that tree. They're almost there. try to put my lid on my can because I get a little sinusy with terp. I have allergies. So you gotta protect yourself. Put the lid on your can. So I just noticed there's another sign back here behind this tree. So I just want to put a little mark just to indicate the sign so you see a shape. Then I'll put the other tree in front of it, the sycamore. So we're going to come forward now to the sycamore tree. And actually I'll do this pole first. So I'll do the pole, then I'll do the sycamore tree. The pole is just going to be like a simple stroke, but for these, I like to use rigger brushes because I can just hit it with one stroke, and I really love Rosemary's rigger brushes because they have a long handle on them, so you don't have to be right up on it. We're not writing, we're painting. So you want to hold your brush further back on the handle, you know? And I try to go at it like I'm a fencer, so to say. So the pole is like just another gray, but I want it to come out because I want you to see it. I want you to know it's there. I want the viewer to know it's there. Just indicate it. And yes, I touched my painting, but I get to touch it again now. Look, see, look, gone. Bam, just like that. So I want to get the sign in. Kind of a weird green sign that they use there. It's actually a little lighter than that. We'll come back with some of that green that was that's in the tree behind it, just to get rid of that little hole. Then with the same rigger, we'll indicate a little bit of writing, just a couple dabs, really. Making it look like a little more like the street sign. But you can't hardly even tell because it's too dark. So lighten that up a little more. All that just for that little guy right there. But it's important. To me, it's important. So don't forget your street signs when you're doing street scenes. start doing the branches for the sycamore tree. Now it kind of comes down into like right here on the, tucks right behind the cable car. Just trying to get the right colors. They're weird trees. Branches go crazy on them. All we want to do is simply indicate a couple branches. We don't want to put every single branch in the tree. We just want it to look like there's branches. That one is too big. Be a good spot for the rigger. So notice the rigger. The riggers are great for little branches. Simple. Notice how I'm holding my hand, holding the brush with my hand. It's way back. I'm not right up on it. Lighten those up a little tiny bit. And scrape into them, it knocks them back a little bit sometimes. I want to darken the base part just a little bit more. A little more color into the tree. Sometimes going over the branches you just put in just to give it that layered look helps with the depth and the structure of the tree. Do a little roll with a little tiny hint of green. A little roll. Come back in with some brighter yellow orange color. And it'll be kind of done. Until I see something else wrong with it, of course. So it was kind of fall colors there, so trying to indicate a little bit of that. Little roll, little flick. Kind of digging that. So just notice this little dark spot back here that I want to punch it up a little bit, which will help the tree, separate the tree from the wall. It's probably a doorway. Excuse me for burping in your ear. Windows. So let's clean these windows up a little bit. Actually, song, So there's all these windows and stuff on this building right here with bricks. So I'm just trying to indicate the brick color a little more. So I put a little more red, mixed that with this puddle of mud over here. It's a good puddle of mud. Here, it's part of the wall as well. So I want the wall, this corner right here of the building to pop out a little more. So there's like reflective light hitting right here, kind of hard. And then I'll darken this side a little bit. Just to try to define the building a little more right there on that corner. But we still want it to be warm, so. Just want to clean it up a little bit. Let's bring this edge down a little lower. We're moving right along, people. More signs. There's one right over around here somewhere. I just got to get it in there. About right, in the right spot. It's actually bigger than that. Heck nabbit. I've messed my window up. All in the name of a sign. Just notice the tree comes down a little bit, so a little more. So I'm going to fix it. All I'm trying to do is just get kind of an accurate drawing. I'm not, I'm not trying to be exact. But when I see things that are off, my ADD kicks in and I need to correct it. So I'll probably end up fixing it or changing it anyways. That is starting to work. So there's a little spot of the brick wall popping through, like right up in here. there's another pole. Comes down about here. I gotta move my pole over. It's all right, we'll erase it. When I was adjusting my tree over in here, I noticed that my proportions are still a little off. And earlier I put in my street light pole there. Well, that was wrong. It's wrong. I need to move it over a little bit. My shadow's right here. My shadow's still good. It's the rest of it though. So like where I have the light right here, there's actually tree there. So I'm gonna just smudge it over a little bit. Just like that, boom, gone, erased. Which means this part needs to come over here more. And then I can put my street light back in. That's actually higher. Don't listen to me. Well, listen to me, but don't listen to me. It's just a little higher, so. That's better. Because my street light, there's a shadow cast off of the pole. So there's this shadow right here. My light's like the pole's like right here. Which puts that light right there. Minor adjustments. So you see this one, there's a perspective to it. So there's this one here, which is closer to me, and below this one. This one's up a little higher because that street flattens out right there. It's a tricky spot to paint, but that's part of paying attention to your proportions and seeing and relating everything together, you know. So I know that earlier today, I didn't do that. I didn't see that. But I caught it. It's okay. We live and we paint on. And there's a little light down here too, which blends in with the windows. So you got to remember where it is. Then there's a little walking signal. Walk, don't walk. Which in San Francisco, pretty much everybody that's a local is a jaywalker. So if you want to fit in, be a jaywalker. Don't be a tourist. Just walk across the street. It's okay. My wife would say, don't listen to him though, so. Jaywalking is not for everybody. Come back in behind that. So at this point, I'm gonna start building it, even bringing it forward even more. So I've been concentrating back here, trying to add the layers of atmosphere, get the building set in and stuff. Now I'm gonna start to, the stage is being set basically. So now I'm gonna start building up my street corner over here. There's people standing on it. I gotta, get in there and redraw the, and add the corner that's actually there. It's in shadow, so it's kind of nice. It's a slightly different value than this cool purple that I have put in there. Probably use like a little bit of a blue just to separate it. Also, but at the same time, harmonizing with the warms that are in there. Then once I get going with that, I'll start working on my street and coming forward with like these cars that are here, starting to add to the street car, the cable car. Don't call it a street car, it's a cable car. So I'm gonna start pulling it forward more. I will go back here after I set this up some more, and I will work on some things after I let it sink in my head a little bit, what I wanna define a little more. So let's jump on this corner over here. I'm just going to indicate some people just so I know where they're at. Maybe, actually I'll do the pole first because the people are in front of the pole. Pulling out my awesome Rigger by Rosemary brushes. Yes, that's a product placement. So the pole's kind of dark. I just want to make sure that I get a nice dark stroke in there to indicate the pole. So bam, pole's done. There's a little street sign that goes like right here. It's a one-way sign. So we'll try to get that in there a little bit. Indicate the little arrow. Big arrow. How are we looking at it? Just for fun, I'm going to throw in the red from the red lights because it's part of the eye candy that I like to put in. I usually wait towards the end, but sometimes I like to put it in there just so I know it's there, and it reminds me of what's there, so I don't paint over it, or just to give it a little pop. Setting it up. Oops, that one's a little big. And to make them a little brighter sometimes, put in a little dab of orange, just to give it that. Gives it a little sparkle. It's kind of sparkly. Corner's shaping up nicely. So there's a cluster of people right here. Standing on the corner, waiting to cross the street like tourists. Again, don't listen to me. So I'm just scraping in a little bit of where they're at so I can make it look like there's a little group of people waiting to cross the street. That's my curb line, basically. That's where the sidewalk is. So I need to go back here just to get rid of some of that extra part I put in on accident. I'm going to redraw those guys. There's someone crossing the street right here. Again, I'm not going to put a lot of detail on these guys. They're just indications of people. If I was doing a whole, like just that street corner, there'd be way more detail put on them. So you'll see when I get there. It's coming up. It's a little darker. Still want bluer though, not purpley. So I'm going to go into the street right here where that shadow is. I'm going to add some reflective light that's a little lighter. Put a little tiny warm, a little bit of warmth in it. In some spot everywhere, just in some spots, just almost not everywhere. So do these shadows over here. The people are. Which goes right into that shadow from the street light. That's shaping up nicely. I'm starting to like this corner. So I'll put in some dark shapes for people. It's just like a little cluster of people there standing, waiting. And I'll throw a little bit of color and light on them. Like someone wearing a purple shirt or something. Maybe it's red. Let me throw one over there too. Throw a little white, like it's a white shirt or white sweater. There's someone walking down there and there. Lighten that up a little bit. And the dark hair, so they pop out a little bit more. That's a little big of a head. Redo the sidewalk over here next to this guy. Make their head a little smaller. Throw in a little bit of flesh color just to indicate some faces and stuff. Don't want it too bright though, because I don't want it to pop out too much. throw a little light on them, and those guys are done. So it's just indicating light next. Little light popping through behind them from the sidewalk. We'll leave it at that like that for right now. I'll come back to that section a little later.
Cities are filled with incredible painting opportunities for artists. But instead of landscapes, you can paint the people, the cars and bicycles and buildings. Towers of steel and glass rising up from all angles. Life in the city makes great paintings, with an entire palette of colors and objects dancing before your eyes. In this all-new art instruction video, California artist Scott W. Pryor reveals all of his most effective techniques for discovering and painting raw and real urban landscapes that capture the imagination. In this new video, you'll discover how to choose the right scene and give it the right feel. Plus, Scott W. Pryor's complete painting process from start to finish. Scott will show you how to use his tools and colors to make urban scenes that come alive. This is not your ordinary video experience, but one peppered with style, as only Scott W. Pryor can do. Whether you're a complete beginner or an experienced painter, this training is sure to help you make dramatic improvements in your work. Painting the Urban Landscape with Scott W. Pryor is now available on DVD and digital video.
Well, you've just seen Scott W. Pryor. You can learn more at lilyartvideo.com. Now let's get to the interview. Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air, and Artist on Art magazines. Today we're interviewing the amazing Scott W. Pryor. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh man, this is an honor for us. So what I'm really curious about is what makes you tick, why you paint. We're going to get into all of that. But first tell me where you live, where's home, what's your family life like?
Home is in Oceanside, California, and I have 2 daughters and a beautiful wife and 2 dogs. And Oceanside is northern San Diego County, but we're near the water, so we get to live the dream.
And you grew up there?
I grew up actually in Costa Mesa up in Orange County.
Okay. So how'd you end up in near San Diego area?
The long story is basically my wife and I have lived all over California, and when I went to school, I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, as you know, and then we moved to LA, and then it was time to buy a house. We ended up back in Orange County, bought a house in downtown Santa Ana, rode the tidal wave of the real estate market, sold it, and then moved down to Oceanside. Basically better schools, because our daughter was old enough, she had to go into kindergarten, and the school system in Santa Ana is not so hot.
Well, those are the things we have to think about. That's
yes.
For sure. So let's go back to the very beginning. What are your first memories of being exposed to art or thinking about art?
My grandparents, on my dad's side, my grandmother and my aunt both painted. So I always had them around painting birds and flowers and cutesy stuff.
Were they any good?
Yeah, they were decent.
Yeah.
They were decent, like hobbyists, definitely. But that was intro to it, and then like they always bought me stuff to paint and draw with. Along with my mom too, so she was really into it. She does a lot of craft and toll painting and stuff. So I just kept doing it here and there, and then as I got older, I started doing it more because I got injured in sports or riding my motorcycle, or so I'd be laid up with a broken foot or sprained ankle or something for many times, and she's like, here's a book, learn how to draw these characters, here's a sketch pad, here's some pastels, ready, go, because reading I tried reading, but that wasn't my thing, so
right.
Drawing and painting became more of what I did.
So do you know how to read?
Yeah, yes. Yes, I do know how to read.
I'm just kidding.
I read your magazines.
Good answer. Good answer. So was that your training then, when you were asked to draw cartoons and so on?
That started it, but when getting into high school, I went more into the sports. So I wrestled and played football. I didn't really do the art thing during high school because of sports, and one of the teachers was my wrestling coach, so he taught silk screening and drawing, and I already spent a lot of time with him, so I was like, I think I'll just go this way and go do shop or whatever.
Right.
And then 6 majors later, I ended up going into art.
When you say 6 majors later.
Yeah, after high school, going into college, I wrestled a little bit in college until I hurt my knee, and then started pursuing physical therapy, nutrition, communication, radio management, business of all things, and then was art. And I took a semester off after being let go from the San Diego State University.
Because?
I was having a lot of fun.
Yeah, what kind of fun were you having?
San Diego State fun, partying, lots.
Yeah.
And then my grades, of course, slipped.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't feel like begging. I was wasting my parents' money. So I took some time off, and my mom's like, why don't you get back into art? And I was like, oh, bing, light bulb. So I just kept going at that, and then next thing you know, I ended up going to the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
So your mom knew it all along, she just had to kind of bring it back.
Yes.
So you went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco. What year was that?
I was there in 93. Yeah, like 93, and then graduated in 97.
And who were some of your teachers?
I had Craig Nelson, Hui Han Liu, Zhao Ming Wu, Bill Mon, Chuck Pyle, tons and tons of people that I studied with. I was fortunate that I worked with the school. So I had a job at Starbucks. There was a position in college work study open at school. I left Starbucks, started working with the director of the illustration department, back then was Melissa Marshall, and that basically was like a TA for her. Go get me coffee, get me lunch, go set this class up for so-and-so. And so because I would be done, I was able to sit in with other teachers, draw with them, And also I got exposed to who was who, and took classes from them, and made my schedule go around who was teaching.
So you were really getting more education than you were supposed to by having that TA role.
Yes. Don't tell Elisa Stevens that I was sitting in on classes.
Elisa, send him a bill.
Yeah. So, and it was great because it was like boot camp, and it was serious, all about drawing, design, painting, color, all, in 3.5 years of being there.
Did you get an MFA?
BFA.
A BFA.
Yes.
All right. And then after that, what happened?
Well, I was, to back up a little bit, like the year before I graduated, Disney and all those animation companies were hunting for students, and I opted to stay and be the second one in my family besides my dad to get a degree from a 4-year school. So had I left, though, I could have had a job with any one of them.
Yeah.
But I stayed in school to finish.
That was probably a good decision.
It was. It felt really good. And we had our own little bonding moment, which was nice. So then going forward, I was trying to I was an illustration major and painting minor. So I was pursuing illustration in LA. We moved down to LA like almost right after I graduated, basically because my wife had an opportunity to get a better job.
Wait a minute, you got married way back then?
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right. How old were you when you got married?
23.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was there. Backing up, that's kind of funny because I had met my wife at a club that I bounced at, and it was
So it was a trampoline club, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Punk rock club. Definitely had a lot of fun there, and I met her there on a night, and then we hit it off, and I was like, I'm going to move to art school. I'm moving to San Francisco to go to art school. And she was like, well, I'm not moving with you unless we're married. And I said, cool, let's get married. And, we're 23 years into it now. So
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So you got out of school.
Got out of school, and then we moved to LA, and I was pursuing illustration jobs and showing my book around, trying to get into background painting, set design, whatever, little niche I could find. And started apprenticing with Alan Hunter at Steiniger Ad in Beverly Hills, which was very interesting. And I also learned that I didn't really like the ad industry because of the amount of hours and time that people were working. It was crazy. It's 12 to 18-hour days, sometimes no sleep. But the money was great. You just never saw your family or your friends.
Right.
So
you moved on from that, and then what'd you do?
I fell into, at that time, I was also teaching at the Palos Verdes Art Center. So I was teaching drawing and pastels. And one of my students had suggested that I go see a show that was at the Malaga Cove Library in Palos Verdes. And it was like Dan Pinkham and 2 other people from the California Art Club. I think Gil Dillinger was in it as well. And they're like, have you heard of the California Art Club? I'm like, no. I'm like, who's that,
Right.
And then I stumbled onto like a newsletter because when I was going through the files and stuff at the art center, at Palos Verdes Art Center, and I came across one of their catalogs. I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat, And so the next day I went to the show, and Dan was there. I met Dan because he lives right there. And he was discussing with the people to take the show down. And so I just introduced myself to him. And he was like, oh, we're looking for artist members. You should submit. I was like, I don't even know you,
Artist members of the Palos Verdes.
No, of the California Art Club.
The CAC, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
was like, are you a member of the California Art Club? I'm like, not yet. I don't even really know anything about it, or, you know. So time went on to submit to become for artist member, and I hadn't joined yet. So on a whim, I just was like, you know what, I'm going to submit for it.
So you were doing painting.
I was doing some painting on the side, minimal, and a lot of, you know, going around showing my book around, trying to get a job,
right?
You know, but I was painting on the side. I was teaching 2 days a week, and then we had also at the same time we had our first daughter, so I was Mr. Mom in it, you know, doing lots of waiting tables, doing whatever it took, you know.
Sure.
So last minute, I was like, I'm going to submit. Called Dan. He answered. He's like, you should go submit. Here's the address. It's in Pasadena. I'm like, okay. And I got my stuff together, and, you know, and last minute, of course, because that's how we roll as artists. Yeah. I was like, I got my photos together and my slides together, and one of them was horrible. One of the reprints came out like crap, and I was just like, I can't deal with this. And I almost didn't go. So on the way to Pasadena, I took our daughter to the office where my wife was. She was working for Clinique at that time. Dropped her off. I called her. I said, hey, I need to drop off Hannah. I'm going to go to submit for the California Art Club. And this is before cell phones, so, you know, no texting, nothing like that. And so I get up there, and then at last minute, I'm like, I need to reprint this. I found a guy in downtown Pasadena, reprinted one of my images, made it to the Adams house where I was dropping the stuff off at, Peter and Elaine Adams, who run the California Art Club, and made it in time, and then that was that. Drove home in traffic and just waited to hear from them, you know, and I kind of forgot about it. And one day, like, I don't know, 4 months later, I go to get the mail, and I opened the letter, and I made it in first try with the California Art Club as an artist member, which was no small feat back then and today. And some people get a little pissed about my story because I made it in first try. And all I did was submit. I didn't, you know, I don't know anybody.
Right.
You know, so It was exciting.
So you brought that up for a reason. It impacted your career somehow.
Direction. It made me go into fine art. It showed me, like God opened a door and I went into it.
Yeah.
You know.
Had that Dan Pinkham show inspired you in some way because you had gone to an art show where there was art on display? Obviously he mentioned the California Art Club to you, but had it been, you know, seeing artwork out there that had made any difference?
Well, I was painting plein air already.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't mention that.
Well, I'm sorry. At school, we didn't call it plein air. It was just we were doing outdoor studies.
Yeah.
So back at the academy, one of the classes that I had was doing narrative painting. That was one class, and we went out and did an outdoor study with that class. And Craig even mentioned, yeah, they call it plein air, and I'm all, what the hell is plein air?
Right.
You know, and so he's all, it's just doing outdoor studies. So
right.
We're just going to go outside and paint. I'm like, oh, fun, you know. So we gathered our stuff up and made little pochade boxes, and some of us did. Some people brought a lot of stuff out. But we went outside and painted, you know. So we did that quite often. Then I took a landscape painting class with him, and we went out for that. So I was already painting plein air. I just hadn't been in a group setting with anybody, and that was part of the show with Dan.
So you got into the California Art Club.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Got into the California Art Club, and that helped me focus in a direction in the art world.
How did it help you focus?
Well, to back up to school, I was looking at teaching with the Academy, and Bill Mon, who was a instructor and mentor of mine, he was like, if you can take time away from teaching and go take a couple years to 4 years to figure out who you are as an artist. Do you want to be an illustrator? Do you want to be, painter, fine art guy? Do that. So I took a little time off and was, doing some soul searching and trying to figure out who I was as Scott W. Pryor.
There is another Scott Pryor artist, right?
Yes. Funny thing is, his middle name is Wilson.
Interesting.
Fortunately, he doesn't use his middle name.
So, okay, let's go back to this direction. Now you've figured out your direction. You wanted to paint fine art.
Yes. So I got into my first plein air show was the La Quinta Plein Air Invitational, or whatever they call that. I don't think they do that show anymore. But that was the first plein air show that I ever got into. I painted in that and basically had my ass handed to me, because painting wise I could hold my own. You had Ken Oster, Jacobus Boss, John Cosby, Camille Przodwick, Robin Hall, a whole slew of plein air painters that were like La Papa members, and CAC artist members, and I had not really met any of them yet. How I had my ass handed to me was because of the frames. I bought a bunch of cheap frames down in TJ, went down there with my grandfather, who knew a framer down there.
TJ meaning Tijuana.
Tijuana, yes. And bought a bunch of lower than upper grade frames, and had people were like, you need to change your frames. I didn't sell anything at that show. I totally got skunked. But it was I learned a lot. That was a huge learning thing, for me. And then after that was the first time I painted with the CAC was at back when they painted at the Mission in San Juan Capistrano. So I was involved in that, and that was fun because it was like all CAC people painting on the grounds of the Mission. We had a full run of the place. We could stay there at night, paint nocturnes, do whatever we wanted, and they just let us do that. And then we had the weekend sale thing, and that's back when I met Jeremy Lipking,
okay,
Eric Merrill, all these guys that are in it today, and we're all still friends. Some people have taken off with their careers, and some of us are still...
Oh, stop.
Swimming.
You wouldn't be here in this interview if you were just swimming.
Swimming against the grain.
And the rest, as they say, is history, right?
Yes, yes.
Any other key points?
I tried to get into the Carmel Art Festival plein air show back then, and I got denied. And I was like, well, what the hell? I know all these people in the show. How did I get denied? Because I've been around, I know people. Why can't I get in? Well, the jury process and stuff, and nobody knew me in that circle. So I called, and I was like, I talked to my friend Terry Masters, who lives out in Palm Springs, and he was like, why don't you see if they'll have a waiting list? Okay, so I called, hey, do you guys have a waiting list? You're the first one on it. And then somebody pulled out, and it turned out it was Carol Cook. She pulled out of the festival, so they had a spot open, and I got to go in like last minute, 2 weeks before the show, and I went up and had a great 3 days of painting. Won an honorable mention. My painting went for triple the asking price in the live auction, so I was like, all right, this is good. And that kind of like really kick-started, like, I can do something with this, So
it gave you the confidence.
Yes, it definitely gave me the confidence. 3 artists were the judges, so I was judged by my peers, which felt awesome to see, like, oh, wow, I'm accepted by these guys.
Right.
And in our world, that feels really good,
right?
To have that, and it definitely builds your confidence. So I just started charging and going And as you said, the rest is history.
So for the people who are watching this, let's go down a couple of rabbit holes if we can. The first rabbit hole is training and learning to paint. We have people who are watching this who are novices, maybe haven't even painted yet, or just starting out. We also have people watching this who are experienced pros. But now that you know what you know, you went to art school, you did a lot of drawing as a kid, you went out into the plein air circuit. Knowing what you know now, what would you advise someone to do? Would you advise them to follow the same track? Would you do something differently?
Knowing what I know now, I think for me, going to the school was the best thing for me to help build me up to be prepared. But you don't have to go to school. If you can find people, not one person, but people to study with.
Why do you say not one person?
That way you don't become a mini-me.
Right.
You want to become your own person. You want to have your own voice. You don't want to become John Singer Sargent, although that would be really awesome.
That would be awesome. So do you recommend doing that simultaneously, or you jump from one, learn what you can from one, then jump to another?
Mix it up.
Yeah.
Mix it up. Act like you're in school, and maybe do 4 weeks or whatever or 4 workshops with one person, then go to another person, or rotate it, While all at the same time, though, you're doing your homework. You're working from life. You're drawing from life. You have to get as much of that in as possible to build your mileage.
Drawing from life meaning still life, meaning models, what?
All the above. Everything. Still life, the chair in front of you, your mom having coffee in front of you, having models posed for you, going to the drawing labs and painting labs, portraits. Get out and study everything.
Right. Always be drawing. ABD.
Yes, always be drawing. And personally, if I'm not drawing, I'm looking at stuff like, how would I solve that puzzle? Because everything's a puzzle to me. How can I figure that out? And I'm drawing it out in my head where I'd start, and so I'm always seeking.
So drawing is the foundation of everything.
Yes.
So if I say to you, look, I don't want to learn to draw, I just want to paint.
I would say, okay, good luck with that. Learn to draw. Painting is drawing. You're just drawing with a brush.
I probably have heard this 100 times, if not 1,000 times. I wish I could do that. I don't have any talent. I can't even draw a straight line. And what I say to them is, this is not about talent. This is not something you're born with. This is something that you learn. How do you feel about that?
I agree with that. And I mean, there are some of us out in the art world that have what we call or at school we call it the Midas touch. And you can just draw and paint anything, anytime, first go, still life painting, beautiful. And then it's just like they just keep going. But to learn anything, you have to put time in, and I think, anybody if they have a desire to get into art, painting and drawing, they'll learn it. And anybody can, you just have to tap into it and try,
And not give up.
And not give up. I mean, it's frustrating. The hand-eye coordination thing is that's all brought on by mileage, at least for me. I wasn't one of the Midas touch kids in school. I had to work my ass off to and catch up. I went from a junior college, taking drawing and painting classes there, and I was one of the better students there. And then when I went to the academy, I had my ass handed to me. I had kids. I was studying with kids from Korea and China and Japan who had all been in art schools, since six years old.
Yeah.
or 8 or whatever when they got pulled out of their elementary school.
Right.
But I learned a lot from them as well. So you learn from the students too. So I learned like how to spin charcoal in my hand. I'm like, how do you keep that tip so fine? Because we're always, getting that fine tip, shaving it, with a razor blade. And then I asked one of my friends, I'm like, how do you keep that tip so fine? And he's like, I spin it in my hand. And I was like, aha. And so I tried it, and it was awesome. I was like, it just was mind-blowing. That just a one thing,
So all these years I've never heard that.
We're talking about compressed round charcoal, number one, not the square ones. And yeah, when you're drawing a line, and if you spin
While you're drawing.
You're spinning it in your fingers. That keeps the tip nice and sharp.
Huh. Do you still do that to this day?
Yes.
So talk to me about the importance of mentors. And when I say mentors, I'm really thinking in terms of 2 types of mentors, living and dead.
Okay.
All right, so you were probably inspired by people from the past. Who were they?
Definitely. Muka, because of illustration background, Alphonse Muka was one of them. Sargent, definitely. Some of de Kooning's work. There's some like Rothko, his abstract work. I liked his stuff, but I leaned more towards the traditional guys. Plein Air, I was like Wendt and Payne and those guys. I admire their work, but I just saw too many people copying their style, so I just try to stay away from that. But definitely Sargent and Sorolla, I would say, were the 2 big ones for me. Living artists, Ert Silverman was one of them, is still one of them. You mentioned Max Ginsberg earlier, maybe last night or whatever, but he was like, we had heard about him through school and the academics, and Everett Raymond Kinsler for his portrait work. I can keep going. There's a lot of them, today. And back when Bill Mon suggested to me that I take some time off, he also suggested not looking at books. So that he's all, don't look at books and don't watch videos. Sorry.
Don't pay attention to that advice.
Don't listen
Bad
to me.
advice.
Don't
Very bad advice.
Don't listen to me. And so I wasn't really watching videos anyways, but I was like the book thing. We all like to collect books and look, and drool over who's doing or what this guy did.
Right.
So I put my books away and just tried to study as much as I could from life, or pulling stuff out of my head, drawing in my sketchbook, trying to get things down. And that helped me a lot to get my own voice.
Well, that's difficult. That's one of the most common questions that I get is, how do I get my own voice? Because there are a lot of copycats out there, a lot of people who will study under someone, and watch a video, look at a book, etc. And those are all important if you keep one thing in mind, and that is that you're learning what they've learned, but you're not trying to be them.
Yes.
Right. So how do you get your own voice, and how do you know when you have it?
That's a good question. I think it was just by trial and error, really, like experimenting. I don't know, in some ways I'm still developing who I am as a painter, because I experiment with while I'm painting in the studio or outside, like thin washes to thicker, painting thicker, just letting stuff happen, and sometimes it's an accident,
Happy accidents.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's hard to figure that out. It's not the easiest thing to do. You just have to have the confidence in yourself that what you're doing is working in a way. And I think having your peers help you, sometimes that helps, because their help is by going, that's a great painting, or that's an awesome drawing, and it's a really good question.
One of the things that often would happen to me is that I'd be painting with a group of people, and I'd take a break and I'd wonder and I'd look at what other people were doing and I'd see how they handled a particular piece in the scene, and then I'd go back and I'd start changing mine. And I finally got to the point where I said, you know what, first off, I can't go look because I don't want to be influenced by what they're doing. And secondly, I can't care what they think. I've just got to think about what I'm doing and do it for me, because if you do it, if you care too much about what other people think, then you're going to be constantly adjusting to that and trying to chase that. You think that's...
I agree. There's one instant, I was out painting with the California Art Club, and it was kind of sunset time, and I remember seeing Michael Situ, and I was like, what did you use for your sunset color? And he explained to me, and he mixed it on his palette. And I was like, oh, thank you, because I was having issues with that. And then I went back and adjusted my color on my painting, not looking at his style or anything, but just the color. And that helped my painting, so I'm still learning from other artists and stuff.
I do these events where we gather a bunch of artists together. They're basically artist retreats. Like we have the event we have in the Adirondacks, which is 100 painters who just get together in the Adirondack Mountains and paint. And one of the values of that is that sometimes there are 20 or 30 of us in the same spot. And in spite of the danger of, changing everything, when you do go around and you look at what everybody else is doing, you do see the possibilities. The key is not allow it to affect you necessarily at that moment in time, although sometimes you'll see something really good you have to do. But to see how 20 people interpret the same scene, or we bring all our paintings in at night, we call it the catch for the day, right? And we bring them all in at night and we look at everybody's paintings. And then you see how different people have approached it, how they've approached it with knives or with brushes or with colors or compositions that are completely different. And it's a big learning experience.
Yeah. Yep. But to back up, you were saying to not be influenced by I totally agree with that. It's really hard to not be influenced by people though, and to look at other people's stuff. You can't, like you're saying, you can't care about what other people think. You have to drive forward with what you're doing. But you can still be influenced, but you can't let that overstate your style, or you have to be your own person.
Well, the foundation of what you've painted, let's say you've painted for a couple of hours and you're going in a particular direction, and then you go off and you see somebody else had a completely different composition, and then you go in and you try to work it into yours, it screws it up. You want to remember it for later.
Yes.
But now a lot of people that I know like yourself are constantly in a learning mode, attending other people's workshops or getting out and specifically painting with somebody who does something that you want to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Now, do you do that kind of thing?
I was invited to a weekend with the Masters, kind of a workshop thing in San Diego, through some other I forget who the magazine was.
They're out of business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Them. They are. I had a free pass. They invited me to come, and I sat in with David Casson for a day, learning how he, trying to refine my portraiture, because I was trying to get back into painting portraits after a few years of not doing them. And then the next day, I took a workshop with Dan Gerhardt's, and two totally different approaches, but I got a lot out of it, and I got to see them work and how they work. That's my big thing. Like painting with them is fun,
You've been to the Plein Air convention.
Yes.
Tell me about that experience. Tell our audience about that experience from your perspective.
It was rather awesome to have our tribe together in that mass with that many people, because we're all in our own little world. Sometimes we get to go paint with friends, one or two, or that's in how I do it. Or like I used to do the Plein Air, a lot of the different shows throughout the country, and we'd have 3 or 4 of us would meet up and paint. So it's fun, and the convention itself was like painting with your friends overload. So it was like super fun to be able to get together with a large amount of people, make new friends, see old friends, and talk about what we do, talk shop. My wife's tired of talking shop with me. My kids are like, Dad, come on. So it was really fun.
Scott, you were selling your work how?
Mostly nowadays direct, but I'm still in 2 galleries, one back east, and Helena Fox, and American Legacy Galleries in Pasadena, LA area.
Great galleries.
Great galleries.
Well, it's not easy to get into either one of those, so that's a testament to the quality of your work.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and in fact, both of which, when they asked me, I was already in other galleries. So at one point I was in 6 or 7 galleries, and it was hard to keep up.
Yeah.
So because galleries change, as we know, and like I was in one, for example, I was in one in Vail, and when I first was in there, the first 2 years, within the first 3 months of being in the gallery, they sold like 33 paintings. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then their clientele changed because the economy changed here. Their clientele, they were getting more South American clients coming up and spending time in Vail. So they changed their whole gallery to mostly a contemporary style gallery and asked me to leave because they stopped selling my paintings, which is fine because I was selling in other markets, and so I've just thinned the herd out a little bit so that I can be in 2 higher end galleries. So back when the topic came up again, hey, do you want to be with us? I was like, yes, because I'm like moving things around, changing some things up, and like you said, they're hard to get into, and they both accepted me. So it was kind of almost at the same time, and it's been good.
So what is it that you haven't painted yet that maybe you have this dream of the ultimate painting you want to do? Maybe it has to do with size, maybe it has to do with place. Is there some dream in the back of your head that you're kind of noodling and trying to figure out how you're going to get it done, and what is it?
Yeah, actually I have something that's in the back of my head that I keep coming up with, like different ideas, and it would be doing, because other Dali and other people have done modern day crucifixion scenes. Mm-hmm. So I have an idea of painting one that involves a tow truck. That's as far as I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, well, you don't want to give the idea
I don't
away.
want to give it away.
Is this a big painting?
Yeah, it would be a big painting.
Yeah.
It would be like, the biggest I've done so far is like 48-60.
Yeah.
Outside 30-40.
Oh, you did a mural. I remember seeing something on Facebook or something about you doing a mural. Is that right?
Yes, recently I did a mural for a friend's restaurant and had to go deep in the archives of my brain of how to work as an illustrator to come up with the idea. So it's kind of like a Ed Roth meets a flying pig.
So what do you paint with when you do a mural, because it's got to stand up to the weather?
Yeah, I used acrylics basically through Royal Talons, used their brand, because it bonds with the cement and the stucco.
How do you find that stuff out?
Through the people that work for the company.
Duh.
Yeah, well, normally we just use house paint, and I've done some murals with friends and where I live and helped out here and there a little bit, and this one was all me on my own. And I was talking to Kyle from Royal Talons, and he's like, let me send you some paint and you can use it. So I said, sure, that sounds great. And it came out great. It was really fun to do. It took me longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Because I thought 3 days would be good, and then 6 days into it, I was done.
Well, the 6 days is pretty big. How big was the mural?
It's like a 10 by 13 foot wall.
Wow, that's huge.
So
That'd take a lot more time for most people.
yeah, it was projectors. Got to use projectors.
Now, do you use projectors when you're normally working in the studio?
No. Sometimes I have just to speed up the process, but for the most part, no.
But in the mural, you came up with an image, you drew it out, projected it on the wall, sketched it?
I did not project it.
Oh, you did not?
No.
Oh.
I have the owner of the restaurant. They own another restaurant in Oceanside. And so I'm going to do a mural on that wall, and I'm going to basically use a projector just to speed the drawing part up this next time around.
So you'll draw it out on a sheet of paper or something, and then you'll photograph that, project that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're still drawing it?
Yes.
We're really excited that you've been in here today. It's been fun learning about you. Is there anything else that maybe people will never find out about you that this is the opportunity to reveal? You're a bit of a rebel.
I'm a bit of a rebel.
You're actually more than a bit of a rebel. You want to talk about that?
It's pretty, I don't know how, it just has to do with how I was, not how it has, some of it has to do with how I was raised.
Yeah.
And there have been times that have been, I grew up as a middle class kid in Costa Mesa, but there's times where I got into the music scene of the punk rock and stuff like that, which most people know that. I'm pretty open about all of stuff I do. But I definitely go against the grain.
Yeah.
And am known for speaking my mind and have put my foot in my mouth more than once or twice or 5 times because of that. And I've learned from that. Don't speak your mind too much. You'll make people upset.
Well, it's interesting because you and I first met probably 15, 16 years ago.
Yes.
And you were a bit of a jerk at that time. But you and I spent a week together in Cuba when we did our historic Cuba painting trip before it was open to the Americas. And you totally have transformed. You've become a really great guy and fun to be with, and yet you've maintained a little bit of that rebellious nature, which I think comes across in your painting.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
That's the one place that I get to keep it.
Right.
Yeah,
you don't want to lose that.
I don't want to, for those who I've made mad or whatever in the past, I'm sorry. It's not like I intended to do it, but sometimes there's part of me that intended to do it too, because I like to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And with some of the shows I've been in, I've voiced my opinion about how they could change some things, and they didn't like it, and then eventually they end up changing it. I'm like, told you, I've been here, you won't invite me back.
Well, maybe it was the style in which it was presented.
I totally agree, and I will admit, going to therapy is a good thing. It's helped soften some edges.
So, what do you hope to be remembered by? If you were to get hit by the truck today, what do you want to be known as?
Oh, geez. That I'm willing to help others with their art career and not have my hand out. I've come a long ways. and it's been time to give back. And I mean, I tried to start a school, which I'm still trying to start a school, but that's a whole other deal. And it's just about helping others. You know, I find there's kids in where I live, and they know who I am and what I do, and they're like, I am a little intimidating to see walking around at times because of my size, tattoos, beard, and whatever. And those that have approached me, and I'm like, dude, here's my number. Call me, come over, you know. Well, how much does that cost? I'm like, you're a student. It costs you nothing. You just have to spend the time, you know. So, and, you know, family guy, obviously, loves his family.
And final thoughts for people who are on the journey, trying to learn to paint.
Work hard.
What's that mean?
You got to put the work in. It's not just, you know, you got to spend the time doing it. You got to practice. And even if you're not physically practicing with painting or drawing or whatever, you're thinking about it, you know. I drive by a spot like today on the way here. I'm looking around going, what can I paint? You know, ooh, that's cool. I got to go check that area out, you know. So I'm always trying to learn something. And so like another thing is to be open and learn from all your experiences. You know, like when we went to Cuba, that was awesome because, I mean, not to go back to politics in the art world and stuff, but I was kind of down, and that trip came around and it just gave me a kick in the ass. So it made me get back out and do stuff, you know, and be with friends and, you know, get out there and paint. So and think about stuff and be exposed to new things to get the inspiration going. So that way you're constantly recharging your inner artist.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Well, that was Scott W. Pryor painting the urban landscape. If you want to learn more, you can go to lilyartvideo.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric Rhodes.
Cities are filled with incredible painting opportunities for artists. But instead of landscapes, you can paint the people, the cars and bicycles and buildings. Towers of steel and glass rising up from all angles. Life in the city makes great paintings, with an entire palette of colors and objects dancing before your eyes. In this all-new art instruction video, California artist Scott W. Pryor reveals all of his most effective techniques for discovering and painting raw and real urban landscapes that capture the imagination. In this new video, you'll discover how to choose the right scene and give it the right feel. Plus, Scott W. Pryor's complete painting process from start to finish. Scott will show you how to use his tools and colors to make urban scenes that come alive. This is not your ordinary video experience, but one peppered with style, as only Scott W. Pryor can do. Whether you're a complete beginner or an experienced painter, this training is sure to help you make dramatic improvements in your work. Painting the Urban Landscape with Scott W. Pryor is now available on DVD and digital video.